free stuff, free modules, free cables, free cassette tapes, free t-shirts, stickers, which are usually free, but you know, they're going to come along with all of this stuff. What am I talking about? A bunch of stuff that I am going to be passing on to my Patreon subscribers here in about a month or so. So if you are not signed up for the Patreon yet, you can head over to patreon.com/PodularModcast. And I've been talking about this for a while, but I think maybe it's time that I show you some of the stuff. So let's start with some cassettes. All right, the last 2 copies of Kitty Safari by me and my friend Stephen Jett. It is a bunch of really great piano playing by Stephen, run through my modular system. And then I got passed along a bunch of cassettes, and it turns out I own some of them already. I'm going to be passing these on. So I've got VCO ADSR, Serious Lies EP, Minor Truths EP. It looks like it's like maybe a split. Looks pretty cool. Heinbach, Dear Earth. Gemini Horror, Obsidic, Gerald Fjord Signals, great album. Ross Fish from Moffensief, 8 songs about absolutely nothing. I have this one, it's really good. I have this one as well, Fossilize Me, Era. Akil Adam, Hollow Moon. The Great Krell Machine from Flag Day Records. This one has, let's see, Walker Farrell, Todd Barton, a bunch of really cool people on it. This is a Tom Hall cassette. Tom Hall's great, Daedalus. And then I have this one as well. It's called Dry Bath. It's very weird, but I really, really like it. So there are the cassettes. I've got a bunch of stickers, a bunch of PodMod stickers, of course. And then I've got a bunch of blank panels from the Bleep Bloop 2000, which is now sold out, but I do have a bunch of extra panels. So if anybody wants some blanks with my big dumb face on it. Okay, so on to cables. I've got a whole bunch of right angle cables here. Various lengths, various color schemes. Got some glow in the dark, some that are not glow in the dark. I've got a whole bunch of these black and gold braided cables in various sizes. And then I've got some red stackables here. And I've also got this here tote bag full of various colors of tie-dyed Podular Modcast shirts. And then there are a few white ones as well. Sizes are limited. And then finally, the modules. This is the part you've been waiting for. I've got an Afterlater Audio Filthy filter, an Afterlater Audio blend, which the only reason I'm getting rid of this is because I have more of them, and I think they're a very, very useful utility module. And then a nice, simple Envy from Afterlater Audio. These, it's just a nice little ADSR, and it's got an end of attack and end of rise trigger output, so pretty dang useful. So if you want to be on the receiving end of the announcement of when you can get this stuff, then you got to go over to patreon.com/PodularModcast and join up. I'm just going to randomly post what's there, and I'm going to make little packages, basically. It'll all be first come, first serve. So if you see that post, look at what's on there, and then claim it in the comments or send me a message, and then it's yours, and I will send it out to you. As you know, if you've been listening long enough, I could not do this show without your support on Patreon. So once again, patreon.com/PodularModcast, link in the show description. This week's episode is brought to you by Novation and their flagship 2-part 16-voice, 61-key polyphonic synthesizer, the Summit. Built on the same innovative foundations as the critically acclaimed Peak, Summit's deep sound design capabilities, 16-voice 2-part multi-timbral engine, and intuitive tactile workflow add up to a synth that is far more than the sum of its parts. For more information, please visit novationmusic.com, link in the show description. Hello and welcome back to Podular Modcast. My name is Tim Held. This week we have Andrew from Beacon Sound on the show. I'm very excited to bring you this episode, not just because I love Beacon Sound as a label, but also because this particular conversation is it's really the type of conversation that I like to have. We go pretty deep, and we don't end up talking too much about the label and the artists and everything that are on it because we just kind of go off. And so, good reason to have Andrew back on the show. But I can't recommend Beacon Sound as a label high enough. So, maybe push pause if you're not familiar. Go check out some of the stuff on the label and then come back. I really like the aspect of the curation of a collection of artists and vibe or type of music, and then they become these trusted sources where you can just go and pick up the latest release without hearing anything, knowing that you're going to get something out of it. And I really think that Beacon Sound is, dare I say, a beacon. God, no, I'm not going to finish that stupid joke. But yeah, I love this label, and we are going to get into this conversation shortly. But first, some quick business. So let me start off by saying thank you to Patchworks, Seattle's premier synthesizer shop. I've been up there a few times lately, and I picked up some powered pods from 4MS. Some other stuff I can't quite... these crazy, absurdly, comically long patch cables, these stackable patch cables from Tip Top. This is a 12-footer, I think. I got a couple 4-footers. Got these for a very specific reason, and I can't wait to share with you that reason, but that's not what I'm talking about right now. I'm talking about Patchworks, PATCHWERKS.com, longtime supporters of PodMod. They're just a cultural hub, not just a shop. Great people up there. I can't say enough kind things about the old P-Dub. So visit them online at PATCHWERKS.com. I would also like to say thank you to Afterlater Audio for their continued support of Podular Modcast. Please visit them online at afterlateraudio.com. You can check out all the new cool Mutable Instruments Classics modules. I've been using the Razor a whole lot. That's a 1-to-1 version of the now retired Blades from Mutable Instruments. They also have an excellent collection of original designs, and maybe in a few months we might be releasing something new that I have something to do with. I'm hoping to be able to tell you all about that very soon, but until then, please visit afterlateraudio.com. Link to them and Patchworks in the show description. So if you follow me on Instagram or YouTube and have been listening to the show for the last few weeks, you know that I've been on a real tear as far as the remote performances go. That's where I go out with my battery-powered synth and go to a cool place and shoot some, lovely scenery and put together a little video about it with all that stuff that I talked about. I'm sorry, I'm having a really hard time locking into recording these today. Many takes. I don't need to be telling you this, but I feel like if I say it out loud, maybe it'll make it not happen as much, but it's happening right now. Anyways, I just did one recently at the Point Defiance Park here in Tacoma with the Soma Enter and the STS from 4MS and a bunch of other really cool modules, and I thought it turned out pretty neat, so I would like to share it with you here. If you're just listening, not watching the video, then you'll hear the music, but I would love it if you went over to the YouTube and checked out the video. And while you're there, if you could hit the old like and subscribe. I hate saying this stuff, but it's part of how we do things these days. I would like to continue growing the YouTube channel. I feel like that's where my best work is currently. I like these remote performances, the video aspect of it and the musical aspect of it. I feel like it's my strong point, I think. It's what I enjoy doing the most. I hope you enjoy this video that we're about to play, but there are others. I've done some with the Qubit Nebulae and a Blueberry patch, which sounds peaceful, but turned out kind of dark and scary. Some guitar stuff on a ferry recently, and much more to come. So yeah, here is my performance from Point Defiance Park with the Soma Enter and the 4MS STS, or Stereo Triggered Sampler. I hope you enjoy it. And after this, we will get into our chat with Andrew from Beacon Sound. Thanks again for coming back to PodMod.
Neerman.
Neerman. That's what I thought. I just
you can just say Andrew and skip the fucking last name.
Okay,
I hate my last name. When I was a little kid, I could never pronounce it.
Oh,
so
really?
in school, I was like, "What's your name?" I'd just like garble my own name.
Yeah. I remember being like embarrassed, but also like too young to realize like, that I was also being like kind of a dick. There was this girl who had a really, really long, I forgot her last name, it was like a really long like Czech name, but or no, what was it, Winkleman? It was a lot of letters for a first grader to be writing. And I remember just being like, you can't spell your last name, but my last name's Held. There's 4 letters, So yeah, I was an asshole.
You have a good name. Tim Held.
Yeah.
My parents fucked up. It's two syllable names. Andrew Neerman. It's a bummer. I can't run for office.
My last name though is a past tense verb though, so it's like it's a little that's annoying. We all have complaints.
Rolls off the tongue.
Yeah, it means hero in German apparently. So cool.
Well, perfect. Yeah.
All right. Well, welcome to Talking Surnames with Tim and Andrew. So I've always I'll just start off here with my kind of spiel on my love for, like indie record labels like yours, Beacon Sound. I feel like I'm really drawn to labels became probably, in my late teens and then consistently throughout my way of discovering new music, because if I saw that, a handful of these records that I really like, they're all on the same label, I could I could find myself trusting certain people or small groups of people as curators of stuff that I know I'd be interested in. And so, yeah, with today's music industry and the thing, the world of singles and everything. And I'm just so happy that's still going strong and seems to be like, as long as there's a way to get it out to people like Bandcamp and whatnot, like it's not going anywhere. And the physical releases, I feel like everybody was talking about how physical releases were going to be just a thing of the past, and they're not, which is I like, because I'm the oldest age range for millennials, so like the physical artifact is also like a huge part of the experience for me personally, like before there were phones.
For me too.
Yeah. And I feel like that's a thing that a lot of people share, and it makes sense. And I think, like before the phone and everything, I was reading liner notes, and just I'm constantly searching for new artists and new types of music. And I have to say that what you're doing with Beacon Sound is you're an excellent curator of I hate to use this word, I'm not going to use this word, but just a wide variety of sounds that all kind of belong
Don't
together.
Use that word.
I'm not going to use the word.
I know what word you're about to use.
Yep, I'm not. It's annoying. Yeah. It's
you
one
see
of the,
that you see that word like in a certain font, and it's not a good font. It starts with an E, right?
Yes, it does. Yeah.
yeah. No, I hate that. I hate that word.
Which sucks because like what are the, just like sorry, I'm rolling over my headphones cord here. The phonics of it, it's a great word that rolls off the tongue, but it's just been overused so much that it's become its own punchline and like an eye rolling inducer. Yeah.
So you don't think that the label is too all over the place?
I don't. Because no. I like that because
I like that too.
Yeah.
I'm really suspicious of like sort of slick narratives. Like these days, it is really helpful actually to have like a consistent sound and some sort of
hook,
overarching narrative. And for me, the overarching narrative is more in the process and less in chasing a specific sound. Sometimes people describe Beacon Sound as an ambient label, and I'm just like, it's not. It never has been.
No, it's totally not.
It's just. It gets really lazy. I guess that's where I'm going. And in some ways, it's the toughest way to run a label, right?
Yeah.
Because you don't necessarily know what you're going to get next time, you know? So if the last record was like an electronic pop forward album, and the new one is, an experimental pipe organ release, I know that I know I don't have like, other labels have like a consistent, gosh, just a consistent group of listeners, right? Who are going to buy every release and add it to their collection. And I think Beacon Sound's kind of different than that.
Well,
and it makes it more difficult in some ways, but it's satisfying to me.
yeah, and I think
And
that's
otherwise
part
I
of
wouldn't do it.
Right. Yeah, you would lose steam on it. And I think that's why, I've reached out to a lot of people over the years to talk on the podcast, and a really common response I get is like, I actually don't use modular, or I don't really know much about modular. And I'm like, I don't give a shit. Like, I talk a lot about modular stuff but like, I'm not just a modular artist. I don't just, I like to just talk to people because, there's a nice, like, warm, comfy space in that Venn diagram of, modular enthusiasts and people who just like, good and interesting music. So, like, I can see what you're saying there. I will say that for my personal taste, I think that's one of the things about Beacon that is most attractive to me, is because that really shows the curative instincts that you have, because all of this music is kind of like, I'm always searching for, like, something new and interesting and weird, and I feel like you're really good at finding that stuff. Like,
Thanks.
God, what's that album?
Thanks.
You gave it to me at PDX Waveform PDX. Why am I blanking on that album? Oh, now I feel like an asshole.
Was it the Dominic Vaz album? I can't remember what I gave you.
Here.
Was it more electronic-ish?
No, the Location Services album.
Oh yeah.
That, like, when that started,
with
I was just like, this is kind of like this type of music that I've been looking for, and actually just all the cassettes, and, I was listening to stuff today just in prep for this, and yeah, it's just, I think another thing that I really like about it is, I think I gave you a cassette tape. Did I give you a cassette tape of my friend Stephen and I's album, or send you a link or something?
No. You gave me the vinyl on Mystery Circles.
Oh, that's right. I gave you that one. Okay. So my friend Stephen and I, he's like a classical pianist, like Liszt and, Chopin are like his thing. And, over the years, we've jammed with like modular in that, and we've made some albums where I just basically process his piano through the synth and just do weird shit. So it's kind of like, neo classical, or whatever they call, like, but it's also like very experimental. And I think if somebody listens to, if they just randomly select a Beacon Sound record, they could think that you are just like this new classical, modern composer label. But then they get the next thing, and yeah, I think I'm fawning now a little too much. I feel like I've said what I need to say, and I don't need to belabor it anymore.
Whatever. It's nice to hear. It's nice to hear good things.
Yeah.
Especially the last 3 years, I've spent a lot of time alone.
Yeah.
Staring at my laptop, running a label after, Beacon Sound was a record store for almost a decade before the pandemic hit. So I kind of went from having this in-person social milieu to just staring at my laptop, running a record label.
Yeah, that's got to be, and I mean, that's just so much work. I've tried to start 2 record labels in my young, naive, and overly ambitious career, and it's so funny. I just want to go back to myself on those and be like, listen, you can do this, of course, DIY, do it, but like, save up some money, get a little bit of fucking capital behind you before you, like, because you're asking people to join your label, and then they're like, okay, well then, like, how does it work? Well, it's just going to be on Bandcamp and, you know.
Well, it's a huge issue for sure for
Mm-hmm.
artists. You know, when you're choosing a label, you want to make sure your music is going to be promoted
Right.
and you know, handled with care, basically,
Mm-hmm.
and get out to the world. In my case, you know, I didn't really have any capital,
Mm-hmm.
but I had the record store, which I started with, you know, frankly, my credit cards.
Yeah. Right.
Almost went bankrupt many times,
Mm-hmm.
and but over the course of that 10 years, I think I released the first thing at Beacon Sound was a techno cassette by my brother, Apartment Fox,
Okay.
and
Oh yeah.
that was 2013, I think. But you know, basically, the record store sort of gradually became more of a thing,
Mm-hmm.
and the label was funded fully by the record store.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why if you know, if you were to look closely at the releases, you'll see that like there was one year, like 2017, where I only released one record.
Mm-hmm.
It was a double LP reissue that got like stuck at the pressing plant for like 8 months. It was
Oh my
insane, and
God.
all my money
Yeah.
was tied up in that one record, so I couldn't release anything else.
Oh
You know what
my
I mean?
God. That's gotta be so
So
frustrating.
then, yeah, it was insane. It was just, it's a very tough business for sure.
Yeah.
But when COVID hit, I closed the shop immediately. I was kind of burned out of retail anyways,
Mm-hmm.
and that was the one way in which COVID has gifted me, is just simply the fact that having the record store for so long allowed me to access all this funding,
Mm-hmm.
including one of those EIDL loans. Like, if you really want to talk about how Beacon Sound exists and how I've been doing it through the pandemic,
Mm-hmm.
it's government funding.
Yeah.
It's the kind of funding that I dreamed of having
Right.
and could not get.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so I spent and that's why you see the last 3 years the releases ramp up. Well, it's
Mm-hmm.
because I had money
Yeah.
all of a sudden.
Yeah.
Um, and so I've spent that time really trying to figure out if it's possible to have the label be a going concern, I guess,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and support itself with no record store behind it.
Yeah, because
And
I imagine having the store was a good way to move physical copies. You know.
that too,
Mm-hmm.
that too, yeah, and just the general, just the general ability to have a space to be in, to interact with people. Where
Yeah,
I'm constantly
totally.
talking about, you know, whereas now I'm just, you know, if I didn't have an Instagram account, which is the only social media I use because I hate social media,
Yeah, right.
nobody would know what I was doing.
Exactly.
The
Yeah.
label would die. Yeah, it sucks.
Yeah. I often think about that, like how, just like Instagram's pretty much. I post stuff on TikTok, but I don't like do TikTok. I'm doing it wrong, I think, as far as the kids are concerned. I'm just trying to like have that there in case, you know, like Instagram goes the way of the buffalo or something, because
Mm-hmm. It will eventually.
no, absolutely. And that's how I promote I promote stuff on the show, of course, but I also like promote
Mm-hmm.
the show, and I book probably 90% of my guests via Instagram and find out about the new people I want to talk about, you know? So it is
Mm-hmm.
weird to be like somewhat reliant on something that's definitely feeds into maybe our grosser side of our primate brain or whatever, but you know.
Yeah, I think it should be a public utility
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
because, you know, essentially the people that control our economy, and there aren't very many of them,
Mm-hmm.
you know, our masters have created this technology that we're all addicted to.
Mm-hmm.
And number one, you know, the number one thing that makes it work is conflict.
Yeah.
Thrives on conflict.
Yep.
They've created the situation where they've, you know, been able to perfect their divide and rule strategy.
Mm-hmm.
Now we're all on our phones fighting with each other over, you know, sometimes just a bunch of bullshit.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And well, they're making a ton of money,
Yep.
getting rich, you know, richer. And I don't really even see as much, you know, like street activism these days because people think that it's, you know, you can protest on your phone.
Yeah. Totally. Yeah.
So I
Hmm.
don't know. I just find the whole thing really, really depressing, and
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
I'd like to find a better way to do things that involves more, I don't know, print media and in the flesh
Yeah,
interaction.
definitely. I think
It,
there's definitely, I mean, I think there's been, a lot of like groups of people, trying to bring the physical, aspect of just media back in a lot of ways. Um, so it's definitely there's something that is important to many people about that. Like Waveform magazine. That's a print issue, and Tape Op still does print issues, I think, and or do they?
mhm.
I'm not sure, but
I,
um,
I think, yeah.
but yeah, with like cassettes and everything, and graphic novels. Like I recently got into graphic novels because I found Fantagraphics during. Not that I found it, but there was a shop. Their bookstore is in Georgetown in Seattle, and it was really close to where I used to live. And I
Cool.
see a lot of like digital and it's like, okay, well, this is cheaper and I could get it right now, but I'm like, I do not want, you know, I don't want to do that on my device. Like it's also the smell and the feel and the texture, and that's all
Hmm.
just so important. Fuck social media, but
Yeah,
also
I have
we
a,
need it.
I have a, I have a, I have a hard time placing value on digital copies,
Me too. Yeah.
and but I'm also
Yeah.
older,
Yeah. Yeah.
so
Yeah.
I grew up, before, before there were cell phones,
Right. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and
I didn't have one
I
until out
still
of high
remember getting
school.
my yeah. For me, man, I was a late adopter.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of technology in general.
Yeah.
Ironically enough,
Yeah.
and I'm often thinking about um, the the interplay between capitalism and culture,
Me too.
right?
Even
Because
with what I do. Yeah.
the whole music industry is a creature of capitalism, is created by the capitalist system,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and I don't hear people talking about it that much. Like even thinking about the physical artifacts, the digital stuff is way worse.
Mm-hmm.
All the server farms, it's just like that anybody involved in the reproduction of music is involved in killing the planet.
Yeah. Yeah. Um,
No, there's no way of getting around it.
no,
The vinyl
no.
manufacturing, like I'm married to the petrochemical industry
Mm-hmm.
because I make vinyl records.
Right.
Not to mention tapes and CDs. CDs are the worst
Yeah. Yeah.
environmentally.
That is something I'm constantly, um, just constantly at war within myself, because there's my, my like, I guess, pie in the sky dream, started as a kid of, I wanted to be a rock star, of course. And then as I
Hmm.
got
Me
older,
too.
it started to like kind of, it is fully formed into like, I want to do what I love and I have to get paid. So I'm going to try my fucking damnedest to be able to, make those things work together. And the shitty thing with that, for me, the hard thing for that is like, I sell ad I sell ad space on my podcast. And I
Hmm.
feel gross sometimes when I'm, approaching people about that, but they're also business, I know that's like, you kind of have to play the game, but I don't like the game. you know? So
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
I imagine with the label, that's like, I mean, it's a similar thing, but it's a lot different in the sense that like, you're the one that would, you have to get the word out, right? Like, like just advertising and promotion and stuff. And coming from somebody who's been in many bands and has written, created one too many one sheets, it's just such a
Hmm.
fucking slog, and then you
Hmm.
send it them all out and you don't hear back, or, it's just like, or you get rejected, which is, that's part of the artist's life. You get more rejections than not, but it's just there's so much like stuff that you have to do that's outside of the thing that you are passionate about, like,
The marketing aspect.
yeah, so how,
Yeah. I
like,
was
yeah.
I was in a band from 1999. I also had rock star dreams as a teenager, and but I didn't actually form a band until I was like 27 or something.
Uh-huh.
But we were together for like 4 or 5 years, And there was that marketing component, but this was like pre-social media.
Mm-hmm.
So like
Mm-hmm.
the marketing component, there's still like lots of print magazines, and I remember
Mm-hmm.
mailing out endless physical promo kits,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and I miss those days because, like you say, I feel like the physicality is missing from a lot of our interactions.
Yeah, totally.
Um,
Yeah.
but I prefer that style of marketing. Like when I was growing up, I discovered, like everybody else, I discovered music by reading magazines
Mm-hmm.
and like watching like 120 minutes
Yeah,
on
right. Yeah, yeah.
MTV. Literally, that shit
Uh-huh.
changed my life.
Mm-hmm.
You know, um, and to order a record, like I used to buy stuff from like Sarah Records in the UK, right? And you'd send off a self-addressed stamped envelope to the label, and they would send you back a catalog. Then you go through the catalog, and you'd check off what you wanted,
Mm-hmm.
and you'd send them a check. And then a
So
few months later,
yeah, I was gonna say this is like
you
a
might
4 month
get
process.
some of the records that you wanted.
Right.
But
Yeah.
I think that way of doing things is just so much better, just because it's slower. And
Absolutely.
if
Yeah.
there's like one thing that I think there's a lot of things I think our society needs, but slower would be one of the very first words that come to mind. And it's something I'm thinking about constantly. It's just like I am in this game, obviously, like I'm releasing quite a bit of music,
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes it feels. I was just thinking about this last night. It's like, my God, it's like it's already February 15th. Like I feel like my life is just flying by, and it's
Yep.
just like this life of deadlines
Mm-hmm.
and release dates,
Mm-hmm.
and but you kind of have to. It's really hard to occupy like a middle ground
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
with labels. The less you put out, well, the less people are going to be thinking about you, and you
Right.
know. But I also, at the same time, I also feel like, man, I kind of do want to put out less stuff and just try and be less digital centric
Mm-hmm.
and just kind of slow things down or something, just for my own mental health, if nothing else.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think something like
But
what you just described with the mailing and like going to record shops was like my favorite thing back in the day, or the CD shop as I called it. Um, uh, I think I think it's also a function of just getting older, but the relationships that I formed with the albums that I got when I was a kid, and like you didn't have the entire selection of the world's music at your fingertips at all
Mhm.
moments, and I think that is it's just crazy to me the level of paralysis that can give you as somebody who's looking for something to watch on a streaming service or on Spotify or whatever.
Mhm.
um
Mhm.
and that like and this is me maybe being old, but that's like one of the most heartbreaking things. The flip side is you can have people like you start this label and like do what you're doing, and so there's now there's even more music to choose
Access the
from.
world.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Totally.
um so like it's I think why I still buy cassettes and I still buy vinyl, and I've kind of I only buy like cassettes or vinyl if it's smaller indie label, or if it's like some world music, like album that's from, that's old, that I've never like, that I just think this looks like it could be cool. Like I don't buy
Mhm.
my new favorite artists on vinyl usually. Because I feel like with the DIY stuff, I think because I've vied for people's attention for so long as somebody who is a creative, that
Mhm.
I want to pay that forward, or I want to give that attention to those who are seeking it in ways that that are doing things that I enjoy.
Mhm.
I mean, I just explained that like I'm some fucking awesome altruist or something, but I don't know. I feel like if I'm going to try to like really connect with something, I want to do it in that way. if that makes sense. I don't know.
I think it makes sense. Yeah, when I think about sort of I mean, that is one thing. One amazing thing about Instagram and social media is being able to be connected with people
Mm-hmm.
all around the world.
Mm-hmm.
If I often think about the difference between our cognitive geography today,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because now we know. We've only known for 500
Yeah.
years,
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
ish, maybe a little more than that. But you know what I'm saying? Like, for most of our experience as humans on this planet, we've known about the land around us and gradually more and more. Um, but I feel like, I don't know, it's nuanced, and I think it's mostly a good thing in terms of like humans potentially having a sort of a collective mind
Mm-hmm.
set or zeitgeist maybe, or I don't
Mm-hmm.
even know what, or um, but then I also miss, I think of like Flying Nun Records, the label from New Zealand,
I don't think so.
a classic indie rock
Okay.
label. And I bring them up because they started in like the late 70s or early 80s or something,
Mm-hmm.
and they represented this regional sound in New
Mm-hmm.
Zealand. So this is pre-internet,
Mm-hmm.
right? So they were doing the same thing. They'd have to order records from other parts of the world, right? It was
Yeah.
a slow process, and they didn't have access to every song ever written
Mm-hmm.
or Discogs or whatever.
Right.
You can just
Yeah.
access anything.
Mm-hmm.
And because of that, they had a distinctive sound. Their
Right.
label, they had all these different kinds of bands, but they still had this sort of distinctive regional sound. And I feel like that is also getting kind of watered down
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
as we have this sort of global, it's like a good and bad thing at the same time. We have this sort of global culture where everything is kind of thrown into this stew. And I feel like in some ways it's really cool, but in other ways it kind of almost, I don't know, it's overly harsh, but sometimes it almost feels generic or something. Like there's just less like, God, I mean, I think about like the ambient music world, it's just like, good God, like it's really hard, in my humble opinion, to make ambient music that is not generic.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, in
Yeah.
some ways, ambient music, I guess, is supposed to be sort of generic or
Mm-hmm.
whatever,
Right.
um, theoretically. So I don't know. A lot of stuff that I think about, um, you know, like that is just it's just nuanced.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I think also like, oh, actually, this is the second time this has come up this week. I was talking to Mark Weidenbaum yesterday about this, and it came up in a totally different context. But have you heard of the book How to Do Nothing by Jenny Odell?
No,
It's a very cool book. She's
sounds right up my
basically,
alley.
yeah, she's like talking about, internet culture and the, how much attention it takes. And she has like a few really cool like lenses she puts it through, and she actually uses like Pauline Oliveros and like, like listening to sound as a huge chunk of it. But she also has like this like physical geography, ecological approach to the like, yeah, we know what we know about, the places all over the world that we maybe have never been to, but we don't know like what's, 4 blocks that way. There's, that gulch over there where there's like a green belt. Like, what is that? A stream? Like, where does that
Hundred
feed? Where does
percent.
that go? And, like, so she was, kind of talking about, trying to like, um, like direct your attention in that way instead of at your phone or something, like just go for a walk and then like try to do some observing of what's going around you and actually try to figure it out, like how many people know the
Yeah.
elevation of the town that they live in. And I mean, not that that's necessarily any more important, but I don't know. It's just, but yeah, I think we have.
Sorry to interrupt.
No, that's fine.
I love that way. I love that way of thinking. I mean, we are like, we are the alienated subjects of a system that is based on the idea of infinite growth on a finite planet.
Yeah.
There's no other way of getting around it. Sooner or later, we're going back to the earth. Like literally, we all die. But this shit is not sustainable.
No.
We all know that.
No.
It's like, see you around the campfire. We don't know if it's going to be 10 years or 150 years. Nobody knows what's going to happen. But sooner or later, all this shit's going to fall apart. And we're going to be back playing our bone flutes, or the equivalent around the campfire.
Yeah.
Trying to stay warm.
It's so weird to think about. Like, I've thought about this, something similar with, like a post-apocalyptic type thing, a la The Road, Cormac McCarthy or something. And right now, like I liked, well, I don't even know if I like to, but I think about this and I think it gives me some like a little mental anguish and a little anxiety, but I'm currently in a moment of like, I'm oozing with creative, like the muse is really kicking my ass right now, which I love because I can't just work if I'm like, it has to kind of like be the right time. And it's been the right time a lot lately. And I've been putting in very long days and busting my ass, but it's like, it gives me a lot of joy and purpose. And I wonder if this world were to come to be, like, what would I still be pursuing sounds and listening to and getting like because I grew up in the capitalist version of the music industry. And I think honestly, and I think you could say this for a lot of musicians, but I'll just speak for myself here. I think getting into it originally was kind of the method of which I was trying to treat the symptom of not having the attention in the way that I wanted to have it, or whatever, the validation or the acceptance or whatever it is that I felt like I was lacking as an insecure, kid or whatever. So yeah, it's a very strange thought experiment to be like, and then, if you say like, I think what gives me anguish and fear or whatever about it is I'm worried that if that world were to come to be, that I wouldn't do this stuff anymore. And if that's the case, then have I been living as myself my whole life? I know this is a little wooey, but I don't know.
It's not wooey at all.
Yeah.
I think about this stuff all the time. It's kind of like the central gist of my existence or something. Because I grew up in DC.
Okay.
On the East Coast, like my parents work for the federal government. And God, I come at all this stuff from an anarchist perspective. So I discovered Noam Chomsky when I was like 15, and kaboom, it's like, ran with it and never turned around. And, so I have a real schism myself in my own mind, because I'm trying to run this label. I've always loved music. I've always gravitated to music, played in a band for a long time. And I initially started the record store because I was a social worker for 10 years and I burned out. And I was like, oh my God, like I so miss being involved in the world of music. Like that's what made me the most happy. Right. And yet, like so much of what we do, you're sort of inherently compromised. I'm constantly asking myself, with the label, is there a way, is what I'm doing effective in the way that I want to be effective? Or effective is probably the wrong word, but disruptive is maybe a word I want to use, but, but, or am I just merely another spoke in the wheel? Am I just being recuperated? Is Beacon Sound just being recuperated by capitalism? And that's just because that's what capitalism does, So I'm asking myself right now, how, if there's a way to move forward that is, maybe more of like a middle ground or something. Like I'm really curious. Like I ask myself a lot as almost more of like a mental exercise. What would a de-commodified world of music look like?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
right? So
And that's part of that fear that I think I get, because it's so outside of our own experience and everything that we were taught and, soaked up from
mhm,
120 minutes or whatever, and uh,
mhm.
yeah, it's weird. But
So, and I also ask myself, like if shit just collapsed, um, you know, would I still be involved in the world of music?
yeah.
What would that look like?
Hmm.
I am sort of thinking like, how is there a way that I can transition at some point out of the label and into something else? I don't know what that is yet,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
like, how I don't want to just be stuck in this cycle. Like, I'm really trying to think of like how I can sort of push this culture forward in a way,
Hmm. Yeah. I
if that
mean,
makes sense,
totally.
without
Yeah.
just merely being another capitalist tool.
Yeah. Yeah. Hmm.
Essentially, if you think about how humans engage with music for the last whatever 30,000 years or 60,000 years, it's like we passed that culture on orally,
Hmm. Hmm.
right? So
Yeah.
for most of
And it was
the
community
existence of
centered,
music, completely, it was people passing on the same stuff
Hmm.
for thousands of years. Like how they figured out that so many of our folk tales actually go back like 4, 6, 8,000 years.
Hmm.
It's mind-boggling,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
Um, and then, bam! Now we're like it's like the polar opposite, where everybody's making music. It's
Hmm.
very individualist, right?
Hmm.
Everybody's making music. And what I'm doing is I am selling commodified nuggets of cultural information.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah.
Polar opposite of like a grounded, sustainable culture where people are passing, you know,
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. I,
have an intimate relationship
yeah.
with the transmission of culture. And it, you know where I'm going with this.
Yeah. And it's, I will say that, yeah.
And again, just to finish that thought, again, it isn't black or in white.
Right. Yeah.
It's this sort of ongoing dialectic or something, or just
Hmm.
like a conversation, I guess.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, because on the other hand, it's really cool, right? We have this incredible level of individual freedom,
Hmm.
which you wouldn't have had in that more like old school, traditional, earth-based society.
Right.
And
Right.
I
Right.
guess that's where I'm thinking, like, where do we go?
Hmm.
Is
Yeah.
there something we can do that that tries to resolve that tension, but maintains this sort of incredible flowering of very diverse culture, but also somehow find a degree of sustainability where we're not just another capitalist tool in the system and destroying the planet
Right. Right.
at the same time.
So I think something that because again, constantly think of this. I actually pivoted to the podcast because the writing was very, very thickly painted on the wall that there's a lot of music out there, and to try to make a living off of being a musician, especially where I was with my quote unquote career, that was really not much of anything. I started this podcast because I wanted to find a way to promote my music, because I'd spend an hour, or not an hour, I'd spend a year working on a collection of 10 songs. I'd spend a year on 30-40 minutes worth of music. And then the only people I
Hmm.
really had to like tell about it were like the internet, which there's a million other people, well, not a million, there's millions of other people doing that. And my friends
Hmm.
who don't like the same kind of music as me, and they don't like the music that I make. Well, my friend group at the time. Um, so yeah, I've just had to really like adjust and evolve like my intentions and what I want, what I think I want out of it versus like what do I actually want out of it. And something that has been going on for the last probably basically since like my smallish group of friends that I had in Seattle merged with my wife's group of friends when we got together, so 8 years now. We're just like this, this group of different types of artists. Like my friend Steven plays piano, and he lives down the road, and we have like sleepovers there with all of us because he has 2 fucking grand pianos in his house, and it's like a beautiful. He's got an orchard, and so we actually jokingly call it the drug spa. And for the last 8 years, we go there and we maybe may or may not partake in some certain types of things that are fun, and we like jam, and that I've learned since doing that and finding my own little mini community of friends and co-conspirators and confidants and all that, is like that I get so much more joy out of that than I do playing a show. Like playing a show, I do like playing shows, but it's also very nerve-wracking, and it's like I'm in a different headspace. I'm like, I got to get everything ready, and I've got to do all the stuff, and then releasing an album, like it's always, no matter what, it's always some level of disappointment because you didn't break the world with it or whatever. That's just coming from my really, really immature maybe sense of that. But yeah, so I guess what I'm trying to say is,
it's
like,
immature.
I mean immature as far as like the development of my aspect on it. Yeah.
It's again, it's getting into the sort of the paradox of our reality, right? Which is that maybe you shouldn't be thinking like that in the first place.
Exactly. No. Yeah. Right.
I think that's what you're saying. It's like this whole like global. It's like, yeah, I go through the same thing. I'm always bummed. Every record, I'm like, God, I can't believe, even like a record that's really successful. It's like, well, 500 human beings on this planet now have that record.
Right.
Like, it's nothing.
Right. But also I feel like,
but think about the fact that, again, most of our existence, we lived in groups of 20, 25 people. Maybe you knew 50, 100, a couple hundred people, and that was it.
Yeah.
So, I sort of fall back on the, maybe you shouldn't be chasing, and especially thinking environmentally. It's like the more you scale up, well, the more you're involved in killing the planet, so maybe there is a lot of value in just thinking small.
Yeah. And I think oddly enough, this endless selection and this, incredible link and ability to communicate, I feel like there are more scenes, if you want to call them scenes, but they're definitely not scenes like in the sense they were when, pre-internet and everything. But, the metrics chasing, I gave up on that a long time ago. The numbers that I get are cool, and they're actually like, I wasn't super stoked at first. I wanted more, but now when I put it in perspective, I'm like, that's fucking crazy. That's great. This is great. And I feel like when it's, because things have, become more particulate, smaller particles as far as like these scenes or whatever. If we're talking about 500 people bought that record versus, a million, streams of the latest fucking, trap song or whatever, the ratio of, I think and again, it doesn't have to be about comparisons, but I feel like the ratio of people who are really connecting and really like having an experience that is fulfilling, holding that thing, this record, I bought this record from this label, and this, I feel like that the connection and the, positive influence or whatever, I think outweighs metrics, so much more, and I guess, is this my, and then I get in this thing of like, well, is this me like sugarcoating it for my 39-year-old self who isn't a rock star and probably isn't going to be a rock star at 39? I don't know. It's just this total mind fuck, but yeah.
I think you just have to kind of sit in it.
Totally.
You
Absolutely.
know, I'm not sure if there's a resolution, but it's good to be thinking about it.
Yeah, and that actually you kind of just hit on something I wanted to say earlier, like the capitalism, business, commodity, all of that aspect of rather than I don't I don't love it, I don't like it. I wish it wasn't that way, but it is that way. And is there a way that I can do what is important to me and try to have this community and connect with the community? How can I best do that where it's not going to murder my soul within the system that I actually live in? Like I'm going to live in the
Yep.
world that I live in rather than the
Yep.
one that I wished then. So
Yep.
yeah,
It's the exact same thing that I'm going through.
yeah,
It's the exact same thing.
yeah. Wow. I wasn't
I don't have
expecting
any
this to be
answers.
the conversation, but I am so happy it is. Like this is the type of shit that I feel like I wanted to start a podcast for, because hearing people have, these like real conversations that aren't platitudes or fucking Hallmark
Hmm.
stand-ups or something, it's like, yeah, we all have our things. And right now, there are people listening who are just like, what the fuck? Yeah, what do I do? How do I do this or whatever? And hopefully they feel less alone, maybe, or maybe they think like these fucking guys are just complaining.
I would say read some books.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, for me, honestly, the label is just a little like sort of small chunk of what I'm engaged in,
Yeah.
if that makes sense. Like,
Mm-hmm.
um, you know, uh, I definitely don't talk to a lot of other people running labels who are thinking about it the same way I am.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to step out of your own frame for one thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's something I've always tried to do. Um, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. I mean,
I, I think if people are out there feeling kind of hopeless, like don't feel hopeless.
mm-hmm.
Don't feel hopeless, but think. You know what I mean? Like really, like dive in and like dig deeper.
Mm-hmm.
That's like my primary message to people in general, in myself also, is just like keep digging.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
don't be satisfied with sort of the way things are. Yeah, we all have to live. Basically, practically every person on this planet
Mm-hmm.
now is wrapped up in this global system for now, temporarily.
Mm-hmm.
So that's our life. We have
Mm-hmm.
to live within that system and figure out if we can do it in a way that is meaningful and also um, you know not just perpetuating a system that is fundamentally unjust,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
fundamentally patriarchal.
Mm-hmm.
It all goes back, you know,
Yeah.
5, 6, 7, 8, 9,000 years to patriarchy
Mm-hmm.
and men basically taking over and excluding women
Mm-hmm.
and controlling their sexuality.
Yeah.
Like all this shit that we're living now, it all comes out of that basic move.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
Which is why we have men running governments who have no qualms about bombing the shit out of other people's children in other parts of the world.
Yeah. Or,
Because that's what we've been doing for 8,000 years,
yeah, or
more or less,
acquiescing to
more or
lobbyists.
less.
Right. Acquiescing to
Yeah, but
lobbyists
I
to
would
not change regulations on safety and railroads and, you know,
totally,
yeah,
exactly. Yeah, it's all part
that
of this.
shouldn't
It's all part of the
happen.
same thing. But I would say to people out there listening right now, read David Graeber.
David
You know who
Graeber.
David Graeber is?
I'm not
He
sure.
he. This is definitely getting a little far afield,
Uh-huh.
sort of, because everything is connected. And basically, he wrote this book. I think it's like a New York Times best. He's written a ton of books, but he wrote a book a couple of years ago, basically trying to upend the narrative of civilization that we've been given.
Is it the
And
dawn
I'll
of
make this very
everything?
brief. The Dawn of Everything.
Okay.
That book.
Mm-hmm.
But he's written lots of other stuff. And there's lots of other stuff out there kind of along those lines, especially these days, because a lot of people are thinking about this, that the
Mm-hmm.
narrative that we've been given is not accurate. And that people throughout history and prehistory have been experimenting with all kinds of ways of doing things.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I bring this up because there's a lot of hope in there, tremendous amount of hope for what we actually can do and the
Mm-hmm.
agency that we do have to change things.
Yeah. And
another
right.
book I recommend just is Scorched Earth.
Okay.
It's by this guy Jonathan Crary, and it's on Versa, and it's just a devastating and beautiful polemic against the digital
Okay.
world.
Scorched
how
Earth.
It's destroying us and destroying the planet.
Sweet. I got some reading to do.
Yeah. But don't feel despair. Don't feel despair. Fight.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? I feel there's too much paralysis, and like social media totally reinforces this. So much paralysis and anxiety and depression. We're all probably mentally ill. You know?
Mm-hmm. Oh,
especially
for sure.
After COVID,
yeah,
you know,
100%.
Don't fall into the trap of despair and apocalypse talk and all this stuff. You know, like dig deeper, keep digging, make connections with people.
Yeah,
do stuff. Try and find a better way. Try and change the world one person at a time. You know?
Yeah, I think that's the key right there. Is like the agency we have. I think you just basically, dude, we're definitely like on the same hamster wheel. You know, something that I've kind of like formulated because, you know, I've had these, you know, have these conversations with people, and I think it's very like in fashion to, because it's true, but I think it's also, you know, kind of in fashion to be, you know, humans suck. Humans are awful. We don't deserve this. We don't deserve what we've been given as a gift of a planet. And it's not it's the few that are in the power and can't do much about that. So, but what you can do is like, it's the relationships that you forge with other people. That is hands down the most important thing in a human can do with their life is to make and maintain these connections with people. And I also, you know, I've been thinking, you know, kind of, I'm synthesizing all of this, no pun intended, with also this idea, you know, because, you know, becoming an atheist, as a lot of Catholics do by the time they're, you know, in their late teens, early 20s. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Well, I feel like, you know, an angsty atheist, for me, I was an angsty atheist, and that just brought a lot of doom, gloom, nihilism. Nothing has a point. Like, what's the point of anything if it's all like going to go away? And the answer to that for me is pronged. One is like, the essence of existence is impermanence. So live in the world that you'd live in, and not the one you would, and don't lament the one you wished you lived in. And then also, and this is where it gets pretty wooey, and I'm really not trying to be like fucking a bastardized Eastern, you know, fucking proselytizer or something, but we don't know, and, you know, what's the meaning of life or anything. And for me, it's like the thing that has brought me a lot of joy and comfort and eased this kind of nihilistic like pointlessness is like, how fucking crazy, and this is coming from a privileged perspective as well, I want to acknowledge that, but what a crazy, unlikely, fucking infinitely improbable privilege it is to be a part of the universe that can exist and observe itself. Like the absurdity of existence and life and the universe, all of that is like, if you really let yourself think about it, it's fucking like, what? And that's
probably
cool.
It's probably just a window of time too.
Oh, 100%.
Geologic time, you know.
Yeah.
Which
kind of makes it that, and I feel like that used to be a thing that made it more doom and more pointless and more sad to me, but it seems like a lot of the stuff that would be doom driving or whatever, like, has actually become a more like, I feel like it lends to my rose-colored glasses like perspective on it. Like the fact that it is so small kind of makes it more crazy and like more like what.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you know, if you get to the end of it and there's no point, then, or no meaning that anyone can fully agree on and prove, then you get to hang your own meaning on it.
Mm-hmm.
And that is fucking awesome. You know, like I'm so much more comfortable as a being, you know, a conscious being after like, yeah, I don't know.
I self-identify as a magical non-theist.
Yeah.
So I don't really identify as an atheist.
Yeah, me neither.
We know that we know there's no patriarchal God.
Right. Yeah. The Santa Claus God. Yeah.
With, you know, all those fairy tales that were created by the three, I'm you know, just speaking just of the three major Western religions over the last couple thousand years, you know, it's just a bunch of bullshit.
Well, it's also like
that supports the existing way that things are, namely
totally,
which is why it's a god, and you don't hear about goddesses anymore because they got rid of that stuff,
right?
You know?
And it's punitive, and it's, you know, it's like, hey, weird that this all got really punitive when like societies were starting to get large and they, you know, needed a way to control people. You know, it's just kind of like, I don't know, I feel like that. Yeah. So when you say like, are you talking like what's this, like Neville Goddard, and what's like the modern guy, Mitch Horowitz, like that kind of, when you say a non-theist, like magic, is that like, are you like literally referring to like modern magic with a K or something?
No, for me it's just a turn of phrase, just like what you're saying, that we don't know.
Yeah.
I've talked people out of religion. Yeah. Just by like saying that over and over. It's like the only intellectually honest thing you can tell me right now is I don't know, because you don't fucking know.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and when the people who staunchly say they do are the ones that really probably know they don't know the most, and it gives them the most fear, you know?
Of course. Yeah, totally. That's how it works, you know? Yeah. And like, I'd rather like, I don't know, be connected to nature, and that's where I find my sacred
Absolutely.
stuff, you know?
Yeah, yeah. Man, we are coming up on an hour,
which
and I feel bad we haven't really talked much about like what
I was going to try and take this back towards music.
Perfect,
you know, like, because it's all interconnected. It is all interconnected.
Mm-hmm. For sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's a way we process.
That's one thing that
yeah.
It's one thing I don't like about the world of music, I guess, is how siloed it is.
How so?
Like, you know, not just like genres, but also just, I don't know. It's just like, I don't know how to really
articulate
that. But
like how many new like worldwide everyone household name like pop stars are there? Like, I feel like all the real big pop stars and like the biggest, you know, stadium artists and stuff, they're all a little older now. Like, so I'm kind of curious, you know, like what's it gonna be like when your Lady Gaga's and you know, Harry Styles might be like the young one of this group, but like our system right now is not set up. Our world, or the way it's connected and the amount of options, it's just like that's no longer, I don't think, like a thing that is going to naturally, not that it naturally happened, but there's just, you know, but I just, I wonder, what is it going to be like when there's not, you know, is like worldwide giant Beyonce's, Taylor Swift.
Nobody knows.
Yeah.
Maybe it'll be all just AI generated.
Fuck. Yeah.
Take the individual and the personal artistry out of it. Just,
I'm not really concerned with that, because I've seen, you know, because just, I think the fact that something like vinyl is still something that is pressed and bought and can actually be profitable, or at least, let's not say profitable, but at least like a realistic endeavor. I think there's too many of us who are like still value that connection. So I don't think that the AI thing, I really don't think that's gonna become. I'm sure a lot of people will listen to AI generated music, because you meet people who say, "Oh, I listen to everything," and it's like, okay, you you don't. Or some people, a lot of people aren't just that into music, but for the real heads, I don't know that AI is going to be,
Yeah, I don't really mean that.
Yeah.
I mean, I certainly hope not. I'm mortally opposed to just the idea of AI. I mean, you brought up the misanthropy. It's like, give me a fucking break.
Right.
It's like the last thing we need is artificial intelligence. We haven't even figured out how to live on the planet.
I know. Yeah.
Or we've fallen out of knowing how to live on the planet.
Yeah. Yeah. Or just like, or actively, ignoring it. But
AI is being created by the worst actors in our society.
100%. Yeah.
And they are doing this primarily because it's going to benefit the military industrial complex. Mm-hmm. And that's why, most of the money, that's why Spotify is investing in AI warfare.
Wow.
Literally. Fuck. There's a lot of money in it. Like they want to create these AI drones and, just all this like robotic military stuff and take the human element out of it. Like that's what really scares me.
Yeah.
And it drives me nuts when I see people normalizing AI on Instagram. Mm-hmm. That's how it starts.
Yeah.
That's how it starts. I no, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. And if it's like, it sucks. Yeah. I don't know. Yeah. I would like maybe if we had like a benevolent AI, maybe have that be president instead of, fucking.
What would that, I mean, what would benevolent AI even be?
Yeah. I don't know.
I mean, we don't need, that's not what, that just isn't what we need, in my humble opinion.
Yeah, we need to like wrap our heads around.
We need each other.
Yeah, we need each other, and we need to wrap our heads around the idea of an infinite, a model of infinite growth on a very infinite planet. That's something I've been thinking about so much. It's just like how, like the train derailment. Like these companies are making just in profit, like hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars a year. And they're getting rid of their workforce. They're paring that down. Like, and it's just like all for just more and more and more because you are in the red. Even if you made $100 million of profit this year, next year, if you make $95 million in profit, then you're in the red because you aren't as big as the last. And that's just like, that's how you get fucking literal giant fucking dicks going to space. Yeah.
So how do we take the industry out of the culture of music?
Then
what are we left with? What are we left with?
Right. So something I was thinking,
you won't be holding those vinyl albums in your hand any longer.
Exactly.
Presumably, maybe there's a way.
I want to do this thing where like David Bazan did it for a while from Page of the Lion, but still it would still. I can't get around the commerce thing. And I would have to be like a trust fund kid or just have a bunch of, free time and a bunch of money. But I think it would be really cool to just like go on tour, but just play living room shows at, people's house that are a fan of this. And maybe if they're a musician, they can play the show too. And then, you have like just a little house party with a small group of people and you play some music, but you also hang out, but it's like, yeah, I think I probably would do stuff like that if I, had like retirement. I don't need to work any more money, but that's again, like, how do you, that's
the problem. I've talked to, even artists on the label. How cool would it be instead of playing a show a night for 30 days in Europe? I remember talking to Peter Broderick, my old friend Peter Broderick, about Barcelona. I was like just going off by how cool Barcelona is or something. He was like, yeah, I've been there a bunch of times, but I've never really been there.
Mm-hmm.
Played shows there, cruise in, next day you drive out and go to the next city. You know, like how cool would it be to be able to go on tour, but spend more time in each place and like really become more embedded, maybe make music with people. Like who even knows, you
Mm-hmm.
know? Um, I guess that could be one. Going back to what we were saying, talking about earlier with like slower culture, that could be a good example of that. But then again, you run back into that whole thing where, damn, it's like I'm not making money. That's what
Yeah.
I'm doing.
Yeah. Totally. Yeah. And every time I fucking digitally panhandle on patreon.com/Podular Modcast, like a part of my soul does die, but it's like, I want to keep
Got to
doing
do
this.
it.
I want to keep doing this, but I
Yeah.
just couldn't do it without it. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it really sucks. I always tell my wife, like, if I like my dream is not like, we live in South Tacoma. It's not a terrible neighborhood. It's not a good neighborhood. My house is from 1911. I'm lucky
Mm-hmm.
enough that we were able to buy a house, but we had to leave the city that we currently lived in. So like my pie in the sky dream is to make like as much as I made as an electrician off of the podcast.
Mm-hmm.
Or make, I mean, actually I'd want a little more. And the only reason I'd want a little more is just so my wife could take long periods of time off work. So we could get in like a camper van and we could, cause we road trip. That's our thing. We road trip and camp. I want to road trip and camp, but stop and go play living room shows and record podcasts and make music and films and,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't want, I guess what I'm trying to say is I don't want to be famous or rich. I don't want to be, I know rich people, like fuck you, rich people, and they're not happier. I can tell you that.
Yeah, but it would be nice.
It would be nice. Yeah.
I will admit that sometimes I buy lottery tickets.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah. Why not?
Tax on the poor.
Yeah.
Because it sure would be nice to not have to worry about,
Yeah.
kind of already be on your path. I fantasize all the time about this. It's like, wow, what if I just had like $1 million?
Yeah. No, I often
instead of the dregs of a government loan,
right.
like,
yeah.
I could do so much. I could conquer the music industry.
Right. I sometimes jokingly,
not really, but
yeah, jokingly, but like somewhat seriously tempt whatever, if ever there's something in charge, and be like, I know money doesn't make people happy, but please just give me the opportunity to try to prove you wrong. But
mm-hmm.
like, cause like I would love to start like a little synth library. Like I would love to have like a little art house, coffee house that played cool movies and had like a little synth library, because it's so prohibitively expensive to get people to come in and
mm-hmm.
and teach people about it. And so that's another pie in the sky dream. If I could make this into a more profitable, my own job thing, that's like an end goal there for the community. But
have you thought about going nonprofit?
I've thought about looking into it, but like I am just so not good at business and research and stuff. But yeah, it is something that I've been kind of toying with. Like maybe I could try to do like a nonprofit type thing.
Yeah, I've thought about. It seems like kind of a pain in the ass.
Mm-hmm.
Just like a lot of work to even get there. But then you could be like the executive director, and you can take obviously tax deductible donations, and then
right.
You're a little more sort of outside of the system.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Sort of.
Well, okay. Let's. I feel like I know you got you're on a time limit here, and I don't want to.
Actually, I'm not.
Oh, okay, cool. I thought you had to babysit here soon, but I also don't want to like monopolize all your time today. But
I'm easy. You are going to have some editing to do.
No, I'm not going to edit any of this shit.
Oh yeah?
No, I don't like to. No, that's kind of like my version of the punk rock thing. I like that podcasts are these rambling things, and if we feel like, oh, it was a little rambly, well, most people won't feel it as rambly as we did, because we're self-conscious. But also, if they don't want to listen to it, they cannot finish it, or they can fast forward. So
it's true. I love the fact that you use the word punk. It's often described. Sometimes people say, "Oh, what kind of a label is Beacon Sound?" I say, "That's a punk label." And then they go,
I
"Oh
think that's
gosh," like,
probably, yeah,
and I'm
yeah.
like, "Oh, but not
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 punk
aesthetically.
rock. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Punk in spirit."
Yeah, the spirit of punk is kind of like, I feel like the underscoring of a lot of my thinking and actions. But
Me too.
what was it? Oh yeah, so you have some recent releases and some upcoming releases. One in particular, I actually reached out to the artist after hearing one song and in the process of trying to get them on the show, is the Cruel Diagonals album
Oh
that's
yeah,
coming out
Megan.
soon. That
Mhm.
I mean, I've only listened to the pre-order released tracks, but wow, that is a really fucking great set of songs so far. Um, so I guess I would like to give you a chance to promote some of this stuff that's coming out, but also like just maybe like a crash course in how you find the artists to release, and how do you go about that aspect of it?
That is a really really good question, and the answer is kind of that I'm all over the place in terms of how I find music these days. Um, you know, it sucks, but I get hundreds of demos.
Yeah.
I get so many demos. It's you wouldn't even believe it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I can't listen to them all.
Mm-hmm.
Like I literally, it would be more than a part time job.
Yeah.
Just it's like it's almost like you'd have to like pay me or something. It's
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
because the labor of actually like going, So, anyways, I very very rarely say yes to demos,
Mm-hmm.
which sucks from the artist side. But there are multiple reasons for that. One is just the fact that I already have all these established relationships.
Mm-hmm.
So like a group like Method's Body or Starlight Assembly or someone like Derek Hunter Wilson or Locations. I already work with all these artists, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I have those relationships, and I'm trying to get a little more into like um, having a consistent roster
Yeah.
of artists, um, which further narrows, like how you get a release on Beacon Sound or whatever. And then with Megan, um, it was she was asking around like, hey, like anybody know any cool labels that I should hit up, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And so we were introduced by Robert Ham, Bob Ham, who's a freelance writer in Portland, and
Mm-hmm.
he and I are partners in this project called Megalith, where we're just trying to produce events and stuff like that.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
I wanted to talk about that too. I'm glad you brought that up.
and so yeah, she and I, she sent me the album. I was like, this is great, and I definitely put a lot of emphasis on the relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Um, like if we talk on the phone and I'm like, gosh, we could be friends,
Mm-hmm.
I'm much more likely to release your music.
For sure. Yeah.
You
That
know what I
makes
mean?
sense. Totally.
It
Mm-hmm.
isn't, even though I do try and, of course, think about it in that business sense of I'm representing this artist and I want to help them get their music out there. And to do that, again, getting back to playing the game,
Mm-hmm.
you got to play the game.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally. Totally. Yeah. And yeah. Yeah. I
I
have
don't know
so
if that
many.
fully
No,
answers your question
it
about,
totally does. And it's
you
kind of
know,
like, it's kind of what I expected, because that's the sense that I get, like, from this world that we live in, of all these, well established, like, boutique labels, or whatever you want to call them. I'm sure you love being called a boutique label, but
whatever.
it
It's,
it just seems like another one of those words, artisanal,
oh, totally.
yeah. I've had a lot of people reach out to me, listening to the podcast, asking me for advice. I really want to get on a label. How do you get on a label? And I tell them, become friends with somebody who's running a cool label, because most of these people started a label because they have so many, like, friends, or or have already curated this group. Like, I don't think a lot of these indie labels within our, gaseous bubble of type of music that we listen to and whatever. Like, I don't think a lot of them are taking a whole lot of demos. And again, when you're sent so many, it's like, how do you even like pick what ones to start with, you know? And like, yeah.
It's a total epic mindfuck.
Mm-hmm.
It's the only way I can even describe it, because you have this pyramid of a marketplace, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whatever you want to call it, global music marketplace. And because it's a pyramid, sorry, there just isn't that much space at the top, right? And then, you have all these, basically there's far too much music being produced
Yeah.
for a very limited marketplace, which is actually shrinking.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Certainly seems like it's like shrinking away into practically nothing.
Mm-hmm.
So one, it doesn't seem like there are that many labels out there at this point that are even particularly sustainable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. My label is barely sustainable. It's barely breaking even after all these years. I'm like, whew, that's a huge accomplishment.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
So yeah, I as someone who has made music and been on that side of the equation, it's just a brutal reality.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's a brutal reality.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what else to say.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really hard. And I actually mostly tell people, because something I think about a lot too when people are coming to me with like advice or anything. It's one, I'm like, well, I've been on a few small labels, but I haven't like, it's not like I've got a lot of experience with this. But what was I gonna say? Like, I also try to like when I'm asked for advice about like synth stuff or music stuff, like I feel like I want to be really conscious of the amount of time that this person actually may have to even devote to this. If they've got, maybe they've got a really grueling job. Everybody's got a job. And just like the time that it would take to like put in all of the work for your DPK, your digital press kit, and all of that stuff, like that in itself could be like 2 weeks of like 40 hours a week. It's just like it's like I always tell people like I would self-release it and just try to like find people to help, that you think will like it and hope they listen to it. But it's how much energy do you want to devote to something that is going to be probably the most likely thing of the whole, like, yeah.
One piece of advice that I would have that just occurred to me for artists looking for labels is try to come up with some creative approaches. So, for example, I was sent a demo last year by two artists who are decently well established, Raoulson and Tatu Ronco. And Tatu is a member of Efterklang, the Danish band.
Okay.
Used to be in 4AD.
Cool.
And they initially were thinking, we're just going to self-release this record. It's pretty out there. It's pretty out there record. They were going to just self-release it, call it a day. And they decided instead to approach me because of course, the more they thought about it, the more they thought, well, it would actually be really helpful to have a label. You kind of have the prestige of the label you're on, and not to mention just help, like press, and basically what they presented to me was we will pay for the production of the LP. Of course, that's usually the biggest, at least for me, that's like the biggest chunk of change in any release, and it's a risk. Look, it's like a serious investment and risk,
Yeah.
And they were like, we'll pay for the production of the LP, and you can just buy as many copies as you need or sell, and in return, you give us a press campaign. And that did it.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was enough. Like, otherwise, it wasn't like I was going to say no necessarily, but the fact that they were like, it really is kind of getting away from this more old school capitalist model of how to do things, how a record label should operate, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
But I would definitely recommend sort of exploring, trying to get out of the sort of old school way of thinking about working with a record label.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Tim Heidecker and
Whatever that's worth.
right. Yeah, do you know Tim and Eric, the comedians?
I know who they are. Yeah.
So Tim and Eric, with their first like it was a VHS tape of like their like little I don't even know what they called it. I think they were just like comedy like sketches. They got Bob Odenkirk from Mr. Shows, and Better Call Saul now. They got his address to send him something, and they sent him their VHS tape, but they also sent him a bill for the shipping, and that is what like made him watch it because he's like, that's fucking hilarious, that these guys would send me a bill. And if they hadn't done that, who knows, the world might not have Tim and Eric. So like I agree,
Yeah.
like I'm not saying you should do that specifically, but yeah, creative approaches. Like I kind of doubled down on just trying to, like, I think word of mouth is huge and relationships with people in real life is huge. So if you do have
Absolutely.
like a scene in your area, like don't do this just so you can hope to meet somebody that has a label, but like try to meet the people who are playing the shows that you want to see and want to play in your area, and just fucking do it and put yourself out there and don't be nervous. Like if they're a dick, then you don't want to be friends with them anyway, like be cool.
Totally.
Don't bug them, but just try to like become like, just try to work your way into the scene. And, I think a lot of people want an easy, quick answer, but I think you got to put the time in too.
It's for sure. Yeah. Another thing I would say is just that introducing new artists. So introducing an unknown artist is the hardest thing to do.
Oh, for sure.
And
Yeah.
the small, obviously the smaller the label, the less well-known the label, the less powerful, the less wealthy the label, the more difficult it's going to be.
Yep. That's
as
totally
I've discovered over and over again. If you're trying to introduce an unknown artist, holy crap, And so it's another piece of the puzzle which supports what you just said, which is it's really important to have your own thing going on. That is often a deciding factor. For me, it sucks, but it has to be.
And that's
because I don't have unlimited funds.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
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 It's like I need to be really careful. So it's kind of similar to, it's kind of analogous to, oh gosh, probably shouldn't even bring that up. There's all these labels trying to get just distribution. And it's almost like we need like someone needs to come up with like kind of like how Secretly 25, 30 years ago realized, wow, there's no room for us in the existing marketplace. We've got to start our own thing. It's almost like someone's got to start something new today. Because there are all these labels out there that are really worthy of being distributed, for one thing. But it's, the existing distribution system, and it's understandable. It's kind of analogous to a label trying to decide whether to bring on an artist that's less well known, because you are taking a huge risk, and it sucks. Again, it gets back to this capitalist mindset that is really hard to, because you're stuck in this system. It's hard to get out of that. You have to think like that, and I think that's really discouraging for artists who are trying to make a go at it and trying to figure out how to make it work.
Yeah, I think the theme, or I think the takeaway for me, if I was out listening to our conversation, is like the bottom line is the community that you can find and foster, and the relationships with the people in that community, and then also just like finding like what it is about what you do that makes you happy, and try your best to see if any, like whatever those, if you make a list of the 5 things that make you happiest with your artistic pursuits, try to make that work in a way that doesn't depend on the capitalist system, which good luck, but there, there are ways. And if you can find 5 people to listen to your album and then talk to you about your album, start an album club on a Discord channel or something, build a little community where like, okay, what would you rather have? 100 people listen to the first 30 seconds of your 10 songs, or would you want like 15, 20 people listen to your album multiple times to get to know it well enough to be able to talk about it with you, stuff like that. So,
yeah, absolutely. Totally. I would say keep thinking, dig deeper, and don't just accept the way things are.
Yep, totally. Fuck, I usually do a Patreon bonus thing, but I'm not putting any of this behind the paywall. This has been a fucking awesome chat, and and I think you're gonna have to come back because I'm gonna actually have to like talk to you about Beacon Sound more specifically. But I think this was really cool. And
I would love to come back on.
Yeah, and I usually ask people at the end, like, do you have anything to shout from the Modular Mountaintops? But I feel like this whole thing is us been shouting and proclaiming from the top. But do you want to promote some upcoming releases and how people can find your stuff and the show? Like, how does your show series work and whatnot?
I would love it if people listening who, you can always listen to stuff on Bandcamp, but I would really love it if you walked into your favorite record store and said, "Hey, will you please order this record?"
Oh, nice. Yeah.
That would be cool. But yeah, I mean, otherwise hit up Bandcamp. I love Bandcamp.
Yeah. Thank God for Bandcamp.
That's a great way. Totally. And the other thing that I would say is if, like if you're, I almost feel like I should put like a "no one turned away for lack of funds" thing on the website, But if you're like, God, I live in Ireland and I really want that record, but I can't pay the $28 shipping or whatever, hit me up.
Mm-hmm.
Send me an email because I'll probably sell the record to you for $10 or something,
Yeah, I love it. Punk rock. That's punk rock.
Yeah, I do that kind of stuff all the time.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that.
And I don't know if that really answered your question, but then the Megalith thing, basically, I was doing shows in Beacon Sound for many years, and I loved it. And it kind of got to the stage where I didn't want to sell records anymore because I was just tired of retail. God, you want to talk about brutal?
Yeah.
And when I closed the shop, over the last 3 years, I just came to realize, wow, what I really miss is having a space and then being able to put on shows. And I was simultaneously feeling like I didn't want to do it alone anymore. So I hit up my friend Bob and said, "Hey, you want to do this thing together?" Just for starters, we thought about bringing more people in and also making more of like a collective endeavor. But for now, it's just me and Bob, and we've been putting on shows in other people's venues. It's like Holocene here in Portland, a bar called No Fun. But we did just find a physical space.
Oh, cool. Hell yeah.
But it's not suitable for a venue.
Oh.
But it's such a great location and the rent is so cheap. I should knock on wood because we haven't signed a lease yet. I think we're going to do it.
And what are you going to do there then?
Basically, it's going to be label headquarters. Bob's a freelance writer, so he's going to have a writing studio, and then we're thinking about doing books and records up front.
Oh, cool! Yeah, that'd be awesome.
So I might actually be getting back into records, but I think Bob might do the record thing. I might do the book thing, something like that. Okay. But the reason why we chose the name Megalith is because it harkens back to this prehistoric and pre-patriarchal time.
Giant rock.
Say what?
Giant rock, like the Earth.
Old. No, like the megalith cultures. So like.
Oh, I see. Okay, like the time period. Okay.
Stonehenge is like the sort of almost cliche or something, but there were these cultures that existed for thousands of years. I don't want to go off on that too much, but like you might be able to see how all this stuff kind of fits together for me. And part of what we want to do also is have like reading groups and just have a kind of a smaller gathering space to do stuff.
That sounds awesome.
Yeah. And then we're gonna continue doing shows, just
Great.
normal shows.
Awesome. Well, I'll put
Just
links
not
to
around
all of
space.
this stuff in the show description. But we're at an hour and a half, and I actually have to drive to Seattle, so I probably should get going. But Andrew,
Damn.
thank you so much for your time. I really
Yeah, of
appreciate
course.
it.
Thank you.
I'm going to stop recording now. All right, that's our show. Thank you so much to Andrew from Beacon Sound for coming on to Podular Modcast. Don't forget to go check out all the links related to Beacon Sound in the show description. Go into your local record store and order some Beacon Sound stuff through them. Let's keep these labels going because I feel like they're absolutely essential for the kind of music that we make and want to put out in the world and want to take in. So again, link in the show description for all those things Beacon Sound related. I can't talk today. I'm so sorry. Thank you to Patchworks for their continued support of Podular Modcast. Please visit them online at patchwerks.com. Also, thank you to Afterlater Audio for their continued support of PodMod. afterlateraudio.com. Thank you to Novation. I love the Summit. Have I told you how much I love the Summit? I love the Summit. It's great. Thank you to everybody who supports me on Patreon, trying to get to 200 subscribers this year. Don't forget about all the cool stuff that I'm going to be passing along to some Patreon subscribers here in a month or so. And I think that's about all I have for you this week. Again, check out my stuff on YouTube if you'd like and subscribe over there. I'd appreciate it. All right, this week's secret word, or words rather, is upside dawn, not upside down, upside dawn. And if you can tell me what that is in reference to, then you get some bonus cool points. All right, until next week.